can go through any mop heads. I don't even think he used them.
This is Canon Fodder, episode 40. We've made it to 40 episodes. I'm joined by Sidebar Podcast anchor, because he brings the whole thing down, Capitalisimo. Cap, how we doing?
We're doing absolutely fantastic, and I'm glad to ground both you like an abusive stepfather and my co-hosts at the Sidebar and my co-host at Drive Time Movie Night.
And your co-host in life, because I'm sure that your wife
my co-host
is,
in life,
is very, very unsatisfied.
My wife has pronounced calluses around her wrist from being handcuffed to the radiator.
Well, and this week we are live from the top of a school book depository in Dallas, Texas, and there's nobody here.
Yeah, there's absolutely nobody.
Where did the shots come from, Cap? We're gonna figure that out today as we discuss Don DeLillo's Libra.
Yes, good old Donnie DeLillo, the guinea with the heart of gold. You were saying before we started recording that you feel like old Donnie boy here is mid.
Yeah, I'll stand by that. I think that compared to his contemporaries, he's pretty good, but he just happened to be born at the end of when novels, like the end of the novel as a medium, right, which sucks. But he's definitely the fourth of a three-man race between McCarthy, Roth, and I guess Pynchon we'd put there too.
I think that we have to give McCarthy and Pynchon the first seat.
Yes,
but I don't think DeLillo. I don't think DeLillo loses to Roth, and the horny Mr. Roth. And I will say that I even like some Roth B-sides.
And now that I think about like Mailer, I'd probably put above DeLillo.
How do you feel about Tom Wolfe?
I like Tom Wolfe.
I like Tom Wolfe too, but I would not.
Bonfire of the Vanities is, I think, pretty underrated for the 20th century.
I would not. I would not put Tom Wolfe above DeLillo.
No, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't put Norman Mailer above DeLillo either.
And John Updike and DeLillo probably could duke it out.
Okay, yeah, in the run. Although later Updike is definitely fell off hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, it's just Rabbit Engstrom, and then only like the first one, and then maybe the last one.
Oh, okay. I mean, DeLillo has a very large bibliography. So, I mean, DeLillo has a lot of short novels, and a few longer novels, which Libra's probably in the top 5 in terms of length.
All right. Well, so
like
since
the biggest
we're
one
a
he wrote
sensible centrist podcast here, we're gonna say that Pynchon and McCarthy are tier 1. All those other
tier
guys
list, yes,
are tier 2, and it's dealer's choice, double dealer's choice, even as to what order they are in tier 2. How about that?
Okay, fair enough. Tier lists are easier.
Yes.
But anyways, we could do a 20th century tier list. That's an alternative to the Bloom the Bloom Western canon.
Yeah. Actually, that'd be fun. Yeah. And I bet that comes out before Gabe's grab bag.
Oh God, so true. He's been sitting on, like, he's got probably 10 hours of that he's been sitting on for 3 months.
Shout out to Gabe, our audio hoarder.
Shout out to Gabe, slowest editor. But anyway,
frenemy of the show.
Frenemy of the show. Yes, I mean we love to bully our
He's a frenemy on your own show.
But anyway, let's get back to
DeLillo and Libra. So, and I don't know what it is, but and DeLillo, he's done interviews where he tries to explain the obsession of the Kennedy assassination, and other writers have tried to do this. I think no, I didn't even mean myself, you dick.
I
yeah.
feel like you have some special insight here in terms of obsession with the Kennedys, since you.
Yes. I famously I wrote a novel about Joseph P. Kennedy, the patriarch of the Kennedy clan, one of the 20th century's major villains, and that is saying something.
True. Stiff competition.
Yeah.
You'll have to do the 20th century villain tier list as well.
Yeah, I'd say he's a solid B tier villain.
Fair. Yeah.
19th century, he would definitely, get up there in A, but and he didn't have quite the body count to make it to A tier. Anyway, no, but I was thinking more Norman Mailer. I was thinking about the great work of Jesse the Body Ventura, Mr. Joe Rogan, real 20th and 21st century sort of Art Bell, yes.
Other luminaries.
George Nori.
Oh God, yeah. Resurrect Art Bell's AI ghost with Art Bell LM.
There's an obsession. There's a Kennedy mania, and I think part of it is because of the creation of the Camelot myth that really only came about in like one Life magazine article and then sort of blossomed after his death.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they did have the American royalty thing going on. I think it was the first time in a long time where you had, so it was the first time ever, of course, that you had a significant influence of television. And secondly, it was the first time in a long time where you had a attractive celebrity-esque first couple. So you just had these,
and Nixon and Pat just didn't do it for America.
Yeah, no one's imagining Richard Nixon when they're in bed with their spouse. Unless they're trying to last longer.
And only Richard Nixon is thinking about Pat with someone else.
Yeah, there's both the mythos that was built up prior to the assassination, and then of course there's that afternoon in Dealey Plaza. So, dear listeners, what Libra is a fictionalized novel about the life of Lee Harvey Oswald with imagined dialogue and some real events mixed in with completely imagined events and individuals who Oswald might have encountered.
Yes. And it's important to state that a lot of this is torn up from whole cloth. If you watch the JFK film by Oliver Stone, I wonder if he read Libra, because there's a few parallels. I mean, I know he got a lot of his stuff from the actual Garrison trial and met Garrison himself, but I
mean, I would think that he would have had to, because so Libra was released to, this was not anywhere near his first novel. DeLillo was notable when this was released in 1988, and JFK was released in 1991. So Libra was released when JFK would have been in development. So one would have thought that he would have had to have read
he would have at least been aware of it, and I brought you on to discuss this novel because of current events. The previous episode, I had Raw-eyed Nationalist on to discuss submission because of the French elections, and then like 3 happenings happened.
So many happenings.
Yeah. Nothing Ever Happens guys are not to be seen.
Yeah, they're on unaliving watch.
Yes.
It's shocking. So in this characterization of Lee Harvey Oswald, and every time I talk about Lee Harvey Oswald, I'm just going to be talking about,
let's call him character.
Oswald. Yeah.
DeLillo Harvey Oswald.
DeLillo Harvey. Yeah.
Yes, we're not talking about any historical figures from now on unless specified. How about that, dear listener?
Right. So the book begins with them discussing Lee and his mother living in, let's say, rough circumstances. She is a hardworking single mother who don't need no man, except she absolutely needed a man.
She definitely, one man would have made a lot of difference.
Yes, one man would have made a lot of difference in Lee Harvey Oswald's life. So he bounced around a lot. His mother has these the dialogue that is given to his mother in this book is astounding. Like it is a very distinct voice. Imagine a put upon older woman who just has to very much loves her son, but has to rehash every slight ever done to her as in every conversation. And so there are sections in here where you just have these massive blocks of text that are sort of the I'm not sure if it's really intended to be Marguerite Oswald's dialogue to anyone in particular or her imagined conversations. So, and I'm gonna actually, there's
one would imagine that they're imagined because I don't think anyone would stick around for a lot of what she has to say.
Oh, I don't know. Have you? I have difficulty getting out of conversations with senior citizens who really want to lay it out. But here's just a segment from the end, because the book begins and ends with one of Marguerite's litanies, but at the end it's very well, here we go. Did Lee even know he was being used? This is a question I will research. Listen to me. I have to tell a story. I have to work into this, living in the French part of town. He knew Robert's manual by heart. He liked histories and maps. The recruiting officer said, Mrs. Oswald, there is less delinquency in Japan and those places than we have here. He sold a bill. He was willing to sneak Lee in at age 16 before the legal limit. They were preparing him. They were using him already. 3 photos in the yearbook, and he was only there a month. People say, Mrs. Oswald, what is the point? The point is, how far back did it go? When did they start watching him? When did he belong to them for life? The point is, what about the boy in the casket? Lee in a suit and a nice-looking tie, completely different from the scarecrow son in the newspapers and the TV. A sturdy boy, broad-faced, like a Russian. Is this the person they buried? The same as the one they killed? Did they really kill him? Is the person who came back from Russia the same as the person who went? I have a right to ask these questions. How tall is Lee? What about his scars? I will bring these questions out in books and appearances. And so his mom is like, and this is her
Mother of the Year, folks.
Mother of the Year, folks. In the final chapter of this book, it essentially rehashes all of the events of the book. So that's why I'm picking a section from the beginning. So Lee has a rough upbringing. He doesn't learn well. He's clearly dyslexic, and his brother is in the Navy. He needs a chance to get out. He does terribly in school, because he's moving around every year or something. And so he goes off and he joins the Marines when he is 16 years old. He is stationed in Japan, and throughout the book, Lee has this like overweening ambition, right? He's characterized as someone who, he really wanted to study, but he was really shit at studying. Like he always wanted to go to college. That he several times he attempts to get enrolled in things, and when
he's also he has a pretty technical job in the Marine Corps, and
yes,
he's not very good at it, and it's always somebody else's fault as to why he's removed from his position for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Yeah, he kind of quiet quits everything. He'll hold on to a position exactly as long as it suits him. He's sort of the proverbial rolling stone here, right? He gets opportunities. He starts to get back on his feet, and then he does some insanely impulsive thing that is ostensibly with the goal of advancing his broader ambitions, this like hungry search to realize a destiny that that is of course ultimately fatal.
A little bit of dramatic irony for you.
Right. I mean, and that sort of characteristic is exemplified in a conversation that he later has with David Ferry, who is based on a real person, a real David Ferry.
Played admirably in the JFK film by Joe Pesci, with his homosexuality and his alopecia.
Yeah, just sometimes you just have to let completely shaven Joe Pesci dry hump to completion on your pajama wearing buttocks, and that's because if you don't do that, you don't get to participate in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And that's why
cool.
you don't let Joe Pesci jizz on your pants. You're never gonna kill a Kennedy. So in a conversation that he has with David Ferry, which is about the zodiac characteristics of Libras. So Oswald was a Libra, and he says, and to my discredit, I did not mark this page, but essentially Libras are, the symbol of the Libra is the scales. Libras are always seeking balance, and a balanced Libra will see both sides of an issue and be able to adjudicate them very well. But an unbalanced Libra will vacillate wildly and act in destructive and inconstant ways, but still be able to see both sides, just be unable to moderate their own behavior.
And the thing about Lee in the book is, although he was a poor student in school, although he was, as you said, a Rolling Stone type, never one to settle down for very long, he was a committed Marxist. He did his best to learn the ideology, to read the large bricks of text that is Marxist theory, yeah. And actually, got pretty good at it to the point that he could.
I mean, he taught himself Russian.
Yeah,
which is, impressive. That's impressive.
Exactly. And there's a really interesting part in the book where he's in Japan and he sort of meets up with Japanese leftists and spends a lot of time going to various clubs, and he has a relationship with a young woman,
a few prostitutes,
more than a handful,
and he got the
Yes. In his travels,
he contracted chlamydia. The poor guy.
I wonder if that's real or if that's just a little Italian flourish from
a little tidbit, just a little dropping.
Like how do we make this guy interesting?
Well, I mean, so he basically gets.
He's basically Nietzsche.
You think so?
No.
I mean, so he falls in with this, he's very dissatisfied. He has sort of gifted student problems where he performed really well on some of the intake exams for the Marines, but then he just didn't apply himself even a little bit. And he has that characteristic ressentiment that causes him to constantly be seeking these kind of outs. Yeah, he falls in with some socialists who are living around Tsugi Air Base in Tokyo, Tsugi, where he is stationed as a Marine, working as a radio operator, ultimately removed from his radio operator position after his first court-martial, which remind me of the reason for that.
Punched a sergeant.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, he got into a bar fight. There's a weird strain of guy who joins the military who is terrible with authority. That Oswald personifies.
That type.
Oh yeah, no, he is the archetypal rebel without a cause but joins the military.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he regularly, numerous times throughout this, makes these very spontaneous, very serious commitments and takes on wild adventures and then just changes his fucking mind. Just like, oh, well, you know, the only way to get out of, you know, living with my overbearing but loving mother is to join the military. All right, well, now I'm here. So that one problem is behind me.
You know,
I
this
have no idea
sucks.
how to be successful in this context.
This sucks. Let's defect to Russia.
Yeah, right. Ultimately, yeah, so he falls in with some people, starts whoring around, starts learning Russian, and ultimately defects. He
tries to do a quid pro quo for the U2 spy plane program. He's like, I know how to do this. I know what their schedule is. I will trade this information for asylum in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And a bunch of people are like the spirit, kid, but all right, whatever.
Yeah, what are you doing here? Yeah. So he takes he takes a trip to Europe, and then he tries to get a visa in Helsinki. They are watching him. Whether it's the
Americans, whether it's the Russians, whether it's the Finns,
right? He is quickly allowed his visa, and he is taken in and then, of course, interviewed by Soviet state security. Tries to give them a bunch of information about the U-2 spy planes that are running out of Atsugi Air Base, or that were previously running out of Atsugi.
Yeah, all the information that he's trying to give them is degraded and no longer accurate.
Right. It's like basic operational information, like what is the flight ceiling of the U-2? You know, how often are they leaving the base?
Crap
the base doesn't
already know.
Anymore. Yeah. Well, at some point the information would have been.
Well, I guess this would have been before Gary Powers, right?
So he defects before the first U-2 to crash in the Soviet Union does so. But it's not that long. I mean, he only lived there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And it happened, and the crash happened during his stay in the Soviet Union.
I want to take a brief pause on the book, because I know this of yourself. You are a avid fan of Art Bell. You are conspiratorially minded.
So true.
What the hell happened with JFK? Who killed JFK?
I mean, I think that there were multiple shooters. I think so. Number one, the Warren Commission thing. The Warren Commission was obviously bullshit. Gerald Ford is widely regarded as the dumbest president we've ever had.
I don't know.
Well, okay, maybe not anymore. Maybe not anymore.
Say what you want about Gerald Ford. Well, I don't. What's worse, falling down because you're so old you don't know where you are, or falling down because you're Gerald Ford?
Maybe senility. Obviously, Biden at peak was smarter than Gerald Ford at peak.
He was the top
during
of his class.
During the actual administration, yeah, maybe Biden, this final year of Biden has beaten Gerald Ford, but Gerald Ford is credited as the guy who said, well, maybe there was just one bullet, and it's
some bullet.
Some bullet, and like it was literally the first time that had been suggested when he said it in the Warren Commission. He was just like, well, what if there's one? And then there are all sorts of reasons why there couldn't have been one, like the fact that the governor got shot first.
Yeah. Well, no, but you see, because the seat was offset. Or the fact that and then it lines up perfectly,
that everybody, or the fact that everyone present at the scene reported multiple shots.
No, that was just clicks on a radio.
Or the fact that the bullet fragments recovered are there's just too much material.
Bullet.
There's too much bullet for a.
Well, you see, John had a bunch of bullet fragments from World War II still lodged in him.
In his brain.
Which we can't find anymore, by the way. That's true. They stole Kennedy's brain.
Yeah, they stole his brain from the National Archives.
They stole his brain. They took the worm that was in it out of it, and they gave it to his nephew.
Oh, I mean, that's of course, the real secret is that it was the Goa'uld attempting to escape. They're consistently housed in the skulls of Kennedys. Stargate is real. Stargate is real.
Whoa.
No, I mean, I don't necessarily think that it was a convoluted. So in
probably
the book,
not as convoluted.
We'll just spoil it ahead of time.
Yeah, the CIA kills Kennedy in the book.
Yeah, in the book, the CIA using for the not the CIA, a rogue cell of CIA operative and former members of the agency.
Just a bunch of crazy idealists.
Yeah, assassinate Kennedy for the purpose of prompting an invasion of Cuba. And they do it because they have been so unsuccessful. They want to get rid of Castro. The Bay of Pigs was a disaster, and they have been unable to cook up a way to assassinate Castro. So they have all of these Cuban partisans, and they have these pro and anti-Cuba factions who, for various like local political reasons, will ally and then unally themselves sort of haphazardly. But ultimately it is a fucking cockamamie plan, which, like, in the characterization of conspiracy that DeLillo has here, it's not a mastermind sort of idea.
It's very sort of like Man Who Was Thursday.
Yeah, it's a
did you ever watch that Coen Brothers movie Burn After Reading?
Yeah. It's like an asynchronous,
almost
falling forward,
almost an emergent phenomenon.
Yes. So there's a passage about this that I marked. So one of the conspirators, Win Everett, who is he's a family man, he's an academic. He is the one who originally came up with the idea of, or was it Lawrence Parmenter? It was either Win Everett or Parmenter who came up with the idea of almost assassinating JFK.
Right.
Basically, it needed to be a near miss. They needed
to nick him in the ear.
Yeah, we needed to. They were literally like, wing him or something, or shoot a bystander. Like it's literally part of the plan. Better. It has to be a near miss.
There was years and years ago, there was a Family Guy joke about sort of like this, where you just see Lee Harvey Oswald in the book depository building, and he's like, "Wait a second, there's a guy on the grassy knoll pointing a gun at President Kennedy. I'll stop him."
Oh no, boy, such a bad shot.
And he says, "Oh, America's gonna remember the name Lee Harvey Oswald."
There was also of course, the Kennedy assassination, but it both has a lot of currency in people who are concerned about the way the government actually functions, and purely normie spheres, but also in comedy. So like you have things like that. You also have, I don't know, I think it was an episode of Red Dwarf where it's a time travel episode, and they save JFK, but he turns out to be the worst president ever, and United States collapses.
Stephen King has a whole novel about that.
Oh, really?
11/22/63 is about the main character goes back in time to stop Lee Harvey Oswald, and he goes back to the future, and nuclear war has occurred.
Right. Well, and then ultimately, so he ends up being the worst president, and the U.S. collapses, and everything is terrible. So they take they go back in time to just before they save him, at the end. Sorry, they go forward in time to the end of the Kennedy administration, and JFK is distraught, and he's like, "I would do anything to prevent this," and they're like, "Well, we've got an idea." So they end up having. Yeah, so they take JFK back in time, and he assassinates himself. So they're like, no one's going to figure this one out.
JFK shot himself.
Yep, it was suicide. Temporarily unaligned suicide. Plots carry their own logic. There is a tendency of plots to move toward death. He believed that the idea of death is woven into the nature of every plot, a narrative plot no less than the conspiracy of armed men. The tighter the plot of a story, the more likely it will come to death. Plot in fiction, he believed, is the way we localize the force of the death outside the book. Play it off, contain it. The ancients staged mock battles to parallel the tempests in nature and reduce their fear of gods who warred across the sky. He worried about the deathward logic of his plot. He'd already made it clear that he wanted the shooters to hit a Secret Serviceman, wound him superficially. But it wasn't a misdirected round, an accidental killing that made him afraid. There was something more insidious. He had a foreboding that the plot would move to a limit, develop a logical end. Lancer is going to Miami. Lancer being JFK's call sign.
Which, great presidential call sign.
Oh, yeah, dude. So, I mean, I really like this passage both because it explains how, of course, it foreshadows the events that do in fact occur. It's about halfway through the book. So the plot against Kennedy has not fully developed yet. But of course, it's also a very there's a writerly irony to it, because
even
these are the words not of Win Everett. These are the words of Don DeLillo.
Right. No, he's one of the things that I really appreciate about this book is DeLillo is very self-aware of his role in writing this. And that sounds like word salad. So let me explain. He's aware, because he's writing about historical people, he knows what the end is already going to be. He knows that the reader knows what the end is going to be. So he is writing it as if fate. He's writing it as if he is fate, and almost with a godlike, and I mean lowercase g god sort of indifference, as well as
capital D destiny.
Yeah, well, yes. Everyone's favorite guy right now. No, but he does this. Every writer thinks of himself as a god when he's writing characters, especially when death is on the line. I mean, William Faulkner, he was talking about editing, but I think it could be extrapolated out to say kill your darlings, right? So right. Kill your characters, make that
kill the character you most love.
Exactly. And DeLillo here, there's a level of detachment while also making you feel something towards Oswald. Because, I mean, Oswald is probably one of the, if we were doing a 20th century villain tier, he'd be A tier, no?
No, not I don't think so.
You think he's a B tier villain?
I mean, I think there's a...
You think he's a hero?
I have a I don't know. I have an interesting... I think assassins in a lot of cases are not, especially the 20th century ones, people like, I mean, so you have Gavrilo Princip, who killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was a Serbian partisan who was just in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, no, he's a national hero in Serbia.
Right. You have, Lee Harvey Oswald, who almost certainly did not act alone, and also, and was also almost certainly an asset of one or more intelligence groups. Like this guy was fully cooked when this event went down. Now, obviously, I don't, Libra is not a documentary, but he had real connections.
Oh, I mean,
he did actually defect to the Soviet Union at one point,
and then was actually allowed back.
Was allowed to come back. He did after bouncing around jobs his entire life, happened to get a job at the book depository right where the presidential motorcade was going by. It's this. There's a lot of, and DeLillo goes over this in the book. He puts the words in David Ferry's mouth, basically saying that there is no such thing as a coincidence. You are fated to you and this man are fated to intersect. And while in a narrative that is compelling, it's a compelling way to write a novel. There's the real world does not actually contain narratives. Like narratives are a thing that we project onto the world
in order to make sense of the world.
Yeah, but it doesn't actually contain them. So
I'd push back on that, but I'm also kind of schizo-brained. So
okay. But the fact that it occurred at all, and that he was present there, and that he definitely had the gun, right?
Well, and there's
probably not the gun that fired the fatal shot.
No, of course not. You couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with a Carcano rifle. Everybody knows that.
Well, it's more like the shot came from the wrong side. So
his back and to the left.
Yeah,
but it's doubly ironic because Kennedy does have that famous quote where he says, "Things do not just happen; things are made to happen."
Yeah. I had a goal with what I was going to say there.
Oh, go ahead.
I have maybe lost the thread. But Oswald, I don't think that you can call to circle back. I don't think you can call him a hero or a villain. I don't need you only in Libra could you call him a protagonist. In the real world, he was a instrument of someone else's ambitions, in my opinion. I don't think that it was opportunistic. And I think that it was part of a larger and not entirely, and certainly, I mean, I would say very unlikely to ever be fully understood series of events.
Have you read The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy?
I have not read it.
Okay. Well, so in that book, towards the end, you get McCarthy's view of the Kennedy assassination.
Okay.
The main character, Billy Western, he's meeting with his lawyer in a mobbed up Italian restaurant in New Orleans.
Okay.
And the whole thing, like the lawyer's just like laying out how the mafia killed Kennedy with the help of the CIA.
I mean, again, I think the mob CIA connection is entirely plausible, right? But in terms of the who's and the actual motivations, I think that there are a lot of compelling explanations. And in terms of what changed when he died, there are also a lot of questions about, well, que bono, right? Like, obviously Lyndon Johnson gets to be president, but
talk about heartless sons of bitches. Get over here, Jackie. You need to watch me get inaugurated. I know you got Jack's blood all over you, but whatever. Maybe
you need to be in the photo, or it'll seem like a coup.
I'll show you my dick later.
Down there where your nuts hang. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, sorry, yeah, but assassins have a strange place in history, which this does, which DeLillo touches on, and that's what I was trying to transition into here, is that this was, Oswald was looking for his place in history in the book. And he had this otherwise mysterious, very disrupted, almost directionless sort of life. And we do know a lot about Lee Harvey Oswald's life, but that this, by taking this life and participating in the assassination, that would be his great work to establish a legacy is an interesting characteristic of the of the famous killer. The famous killer is a more general archetype, um, and and of the way that DeLillo characterizes it. I mean, you know, and I think there's certainly some currency to that, because you were ready to give Lee Harvey Oswald, a guy who killed maybe maximum two people, right? A tier villain status, which is higher than you were willing to give
Joe Kennedy.
Joe Kennedy.
Well, I mean, Joe
in a
Kennedy
century with
only killed one child, and only kind of.
Well, I mean, yeah, it requires a stone. It requires a stone cold son of a bitch to lobotomize your own daughter,
as she's saying the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah, well, okay.
And the whole reason that she needed to, well, not even need, but she had special needs because she was kept in the birth canal too long.
Right. Yeah.
And did not get the oxygen required.
Well, but he had ambitions. He couldn't have a millstone around his neck. He had to raise 2 presidents.
Almost 3, but World War II got in the way.
Yeah. I mean, fuck.
Well, almost 4.
Could have been 4 if it wasn't for Chappaquiddick. Although, to be fair to Ted Kennedy, right?
I probably would have swam the shore too.
Ted Kennedy didn't have a bad life, so I don't need to advocate for him. But if 3 of your brothers are dead, and 2 of them were assassinated in very suspicious circumstances, right? You got a lot of stress. And you're also a senator, right? Like, you got a lot of stress on you, right? So you could imagine that, he would have a little too much to drink now and again, right? And maybe he would like the company of a young lady, and when something happened that was untoward, maybe it needed to get covered up, because you don't need any trouble. You don't need any trouble. Only bad things happen to the Kennedys.
Ted Kennedy ruined drinking and driving.
He did. He executed on such a high level that no one else got to do it anymore. But yeah. So Oswald defects to Russia, meets his wife. He starts to set up a life there, and he he starts to set up a life there. He only makes it 3 years, and then as his was his daughter just born, or was she on the way?
I believe she was on the way.
No. She was born.
Okay.
She was born, and I recall. I remember this because they had to give his daughter his first name as her middle name, which is the Russian naming standard. So he meets this lovely young Russian girl, marries her after 6 weeks. They have a child. It's the way to hear DeLillo tell it. It's an idyllic life in Minsk, which is in, I think is that in Ukraine? I think that's
that's Belarus.
Oh, Belarus. Okay. Not Russia proper. They have to keep him on the periphery.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is they don't want him. They don't want him in Moscow.
Yeah, they don't want him to be able to be an effective spy.
But so they keep him very comfortable in Minsk.
Yep. But ultimately he starts thinking, well, I can't study at the for some reason he wants to go to Lumumba University. Like, he wants to go to the like African Communist University in Russia, instead of, like, I don't know, any other place. I'm sure that there was a place to study in Minsk, but that wasn't good enough for Oswald. So he really wanted to study there. They make it very clear they're not going to let him in. And so, you know, again, he gets
You are not black enough to.
Yeah, you know, it was he literally got told
DEI'd.
no. Yeah, he got the DEI decline. And so he feels dissatisfied about this, and he writes a letter to the US Embassy, and he's like, "Can I get my passport back?" Which he had previously surrendered to them and said, "I am a Marxist. I renounce my citizenship. I must, you know, I must be a citizen of the Soviet Union. Here is my passport. I will not take it with me. I'm going to give them state secrets that I learned in the military."
He gave them, and then he did the reverse Uno card. He declared oopsie doopsie.
Oopsie doopsie. Yeah, I need to go back to the back to America. Also, you know, like, of course, we only know exactly how this went down from, you know, DeLillo's storytelling, but, you know, but what the fuck?
Yeah, no,
because he actually did defect to the Soviet
Yes.
Union and then got let back into the United States. Like, that's all true.
Yeah, and he brought his Russian wife with him.
Yeah,
his child. He created a very comfortable, well, not a comfortable, but he created a life for himself in Texas, and was still a Marxist.
Yeah, he was still a Marxist. He was just butthurt that he didn't get to go to black diversity.
He thought, well, you know, we have historically black colleges in America.
Yeah, why don't I just get? Yeah, exactly.
He'll go to Howard.
So, yeah, no, it doesn't make any. You know, there are some gaps here because, of course, we don't know the internal life of the real Lee Harvey Oswald, but it's very unusual that this would have happened. One would think, I don't know, maybe people moved back and forth from the Soviet Union to the United States.
Maybe it happened all the time.
All the time in the Cold War. Yeah, I'm sure that there are people moving back and forth from the United States to Tehran all the time nowadays.
Well, I mean, you know, anybody could do that unless you were German. Then you weren't allowed to go back and forth between the Soviet Union and the West.
True, yeah. Unless you lived in the same city.
But everybody
you lived in that one city.
But and then even not, they had a big wall about it. Don't ever let people tell you walls don't work.
They sure do. They sure do, Hudson. And what's more, have you heard about the Dominican Republic and Haiti?
Or North and South Korea.
Right. Well, that's more of a zone. But
I'd be willing to make a demilitarized zone with Mexico.
Totally. DMZ. I mean, I think that we should build a wall, but it should be a wall that's like a mile deep because it's
defense
a labyrinth. It's a labyrinth, and you just have to go through it, and, you know, real minotaurs inside. We'll get
except they're all a bunch of fat white women.
No. We'll get the lefties to buy in by commissioning Dr. Fauci to genetically engineer real minotaurs. It'll be great. He'll be so happy. He's been trying to do mad science the whole time. Just cut him loose on minotaurs. The Minotaur Project. And then when we're done, we lock him in there like Daedalus. So
speaking of Gerald Ford and presidential nicknames, do you want to know what Ford's nickname was?
Go for it.
Passkey.
Passkey?
Yep. How gay is that?
That's really weird. Oh, Gerald Ford was a Mason.
Ugh.
So that's a Masonic reference.
Is it? Oh,
yeah, it is.
Fuck.
It actually is.
That just blew everything wide open. we just broke something here on Canon Fodder. I hope all you schizos out there are reading the tea leaves of my voice.
Yep. Don't come after the based ones. So let's see. So he brings his lovely wife back, and then cannot hold a fucking job down. Dude thinks he's too good for fucking work. He's too good for work, but he's not too good to constantly read The Worker, a socialist periodical, and The Militant, another socialist periodical.
Oh my goodness.
My goodness.
Destiny would have been Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh my god. No. I mean, he
avowed socialist, right, too good for work.
Okay, I do want to say I think it's probably pretty hard work to be a streamer. Like, it's not, it's not digging ditches and filling them back in hard, but the amount of like
you gotta sit in that chair for hours on end.
Well, honestly, I couldn't do that. Could you do that? That sounds horrible.
If I were making Destiny money, I could.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, of course. Like, if you're top 1%, then it's all worth it.
But sir, we're professional podcasters.
So professional.
What if you can explain, besides the amount of pay pigs that he has compared to what we have, what the difference between us is?
Well, he's retarded and we're of average intelligence.
Yep, tippy top of that distribution, sir.
Yeah, we're right at the top of the bell curve.
I can see all you idiots from up here. I can
see all you idiots on both sides. Standard deviations sounds like you're deviants.
We're sensible centrists, so of course we're at the very top of the bell curve.
Yep. 105. 105. Perfect midwit territory. So yeah, so he can't hold a job down. He resents the community that his wife is made out to be an absolute doll in this, and also which
is apparently pretty close to life. Like, she had friends in the community. Like, she tried to make the best of living in this capitalist hellhole after leaving the perfect and ideal socialist republics.
Yeah. And I mean, actually, I think she's still alive.
Yes.
Yeah, she is. She is 83 years old. She is still alive. And she now maintains his innocence. She remarried, had some more
kids. A little late.
I think she started maintaining his innocence in like the 80s. But like not long after the whole Warren Commission thing fully wound down. So go ahead and Google some pictures of her in the 70s. They were not a looks match. She looked better than him, like by a lot.
Which is typical for Russian couples, I will say.
So true. Yeah, no.
Beautiful honestly, women and like potato-headed men.
The wall for Russian men is insane.
It's like 13.
It happens at like 13, and they all start looking like frogs, but not in the good way. Not in the good way. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure.
And Russian women, they babushka out at like 60.
I think it's more like 50, but
still,
but still. I mean, and the transition is abrupt.
Yes.
Yeah. The
more of a tumble than a.
But she was adorable, and so she has June, their first child, shortly before they left Russia. She develops this little expat community around herself. There are folks who are always visiting them. Lee can't hold down a fucking job. He gets frustrated. He starts hitting her, and he makes the acquaintance of George D. Morin Schilt, who a real guy, fascinating character in real life. He's a sort of Evolian aristocrat, both literally and of the spirit, who is a trained petroleum geologist, but also has interests all over the world.
Reminds me of you've read Imitation of the Heartland of the Real.
Yes.
Which related to this book entirely.
Well, Aberration in the
Heartland
of the Real is a book by Wendy Painting that is obsessively deconstructs every possible angle on the Timothy McVeigh
life,
most famous act. And
the Gulf War, right?
the Gulf War. Reading that book from Randy Weaver. So the Oklahoma City bombing. So she obsessively deconstructs every possible angle of it, like basically just without any care for optics. It is true schizo history.
No, it's a terrific read.
It's fantastic.
I've been wanting to do a pod on that book with you since I knew that you read it.
Oh man, I think actually that one, and we can talk about this later, but I think that the way to do Aberration in the Heartland of the Real is actually a chapter read.
Probably.
Sort of like our good friend of both of our pods, the Prudentialist, did his coverage of Stalin's War. Yeah, which is also great, and you should go listen to if you
definitely. But I only bring up Aberration because
the title is a quote from
besides that, when you bring up Mohrenschlitt, it reminds me of Andy the German, who was a fascinating actual person involved, well, quote unquote, not involved in OKC, who the CIA got out of America as soon as the ATF started asking questions about him.
Yep.
Very, very interesting guy. And both of these men sort of act as the fulcrum in the scales, let's say, of the acts of Oswald and of McVeigh.
Yep.
See how I brought that back to Libra?
Very good.
That's some top tier podcasting right there.
What George does here, he does have a critical influence in that. So he is loosely associated with the intelligence community. He's an informant. He's a world traveler in a time where it's not that easy to get around, right? There are a lot of geopolitical concerns, a lot of very fraught alliances, and he could basically travel freely. So he would inform people in order to maintain his free status. So he is the one who ended up introducing Lee Harvey Oswald in the book, of course, to the CIA conspirators.
We just happen to have this guy who works downstairs at the Friends of Cuba as a pamphleteer. We're just gonna, bring him in and see what he knows. The one thing so DeLillo fills in a lot of gaps of the actual JFK assassination, which has otherwise either been ignored or left as just coincidence.
Yep.
Right. So Oswald he grew up in New Orleans, where in the novel he meets Ferry as a boy, but he grew up in New Orleans, moves to New York, does this whole thing, moves back to Texas after he leaves the Soviet Union, and then finds his way back to New Orleans, working in the same building as Guy Bannister and the anti-Castro FBI CIA plotters. It's all very coincidental.
Well, it's CIA, because throughout this book, the FBI does not have any fucking idea what the CIA is doing. They are complete. It is right hand, left hand bullshit. There's even a point at which Oswald is talking to a completely clear current CIA guy. And Oswald is like, well, am I being watched by the FBI? Like, what's going on? Are these guys who questioned me FBI? And the agency guy's like, how the fuck would I know? I don't know what those guys do. They don't talk. Like, who the fuck are those guys? So, yeah, maybe.
There's a grander sort of parallel narrative in the book where we've got Nick Branch. He is a CIA archivist, and even he can't make sense of this crap. Like it's almost like the left thumb doesn't know what the left pinky is doing.
And so Nick Branch is, I do not believe, a real person.
No, he's
DeLillo's self-insert, who is supposed to be writing the definitive history of the event. Yeah, exactly.
Of the and especially the CIA's involvement in it. And throughout the narrative, he's bemoaning the fact that nobody's even going to read this or will have access to read it.
Right, because it's internal use only, and it's basically for the director of the CIA alone. It's like for his eyes and this other character who is not pictured, who is like almost like a demon, the curator, who is sending information to Branch that is tangentially related in some cases, sometimes directly related, but it's just sort of a random assortment of free associative information. And so Branch is basically stuck in this room that is full of reams and reams and reams of papers and photographs demonstrating, like, here are here are what U2 photos look like with annotations. Here are a bunch of film reels of goat skulls getting split open with a Carcano round so that you can tell how the rounds behave. Here are pictures of an apartment in Minsk that Oswald may have lived in. And it's just, he's being tortured with the volume of information that he's being subjected to. And he feels like this task is going to be an interminable thing. So it seems to be our friend Don.
Yeah, Don definitely lost a step or two. He fell back to the middle of the distribution after writing this book.
So ultimately, because of his association with George, he is introduced to the conspiracy, and he begins on again, off again, living with his wife, hopping around here and there to get involved in this sort of very goofy preparatory events for the assassination. So he goes out with a couple Cuban partisans and this other CIA mook, Wayne Elkin, with TJ Mackey, not to be confused with JL Mackey, both equally pseudonymous, to practice shooting and maintain good relationships with, what is it, Area 66, or what are they called?
Oh, the anti-Cuban, or the anti-Castro.
The anti-Castro, yeah.
It was like Group 66 or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're just in the Everglades practicing shooting their rifles at various distances to try to make sure that they can carry this thing off.
There, and also in the Everglades, you have a training compound for the Cuban rebels that have been just kind of hanging out, or they're either there or they're like sticks in the wind across the country ever since the Bay of Pigs failure. The guys that made it back there's this kind of bringing the band back together, not a montage, but at least a glossing over when they're recruiting everybody to assassinate or nearly assassinate the president.
Yeah. You get the idea that this training area is referred to by various names, and many characters are referred to by various names in this, none more than Oswald, who has various pseudonyms. Among the Cubans, he's called Leon. He refers to himself internally as Heidel. In real life, I don't know if there's evidence that he used Heidel. There could be, but in real life, I know that he also would transpose his name so that he would be O.H. Lee. That's also featured in the book. He had a tendency of trying to be someone else and sort of haphazardly throwing out these false identities.
Which kind of gets to the heart of the novel,
Yep.
right? The main theme, if there's a main theme, it's single motherhood is terrible.
You think that's the main
yes,
theme?
I think that no, it's not the main theme, but it's definitely a theme. I'd say like, you know, there's definitely, if there is a main theme, it would be the unyielding yoke of fate. If fate exists, then it's kind of terrible and tragic. There's also I think definitely single motherhood has a lot to do with it. It's very based on the single motherhood question.
That's interesting. I didn't feel like that was as dominant. And in fact, on the topic of women in the story, I think DeLillo does something really interesting, because we have perspective sections from a lot of characters. So it's not just Oswald. The way that the book is constructed, for you dear listeners, is that when a chapter is titled with a location, it is a perspective chapter from Lee Oswald. When it is titled with a date, it is a chapter that will switch perspectives multiple times, typically between some of the other conspirators. The other conspirators are Guy Bannister, Wynne Everett, Lawrence Parmenter, David Ferry, and then towards the middle and end of the book, though he was not a conspirator, you also get Jack Ruby, who was, of course, the eventual assassin of
the assassin's assassin.
The assassin's assassin. He's really the assassin's assassin. And I also, I'll get to Jack Ruby in a bit.
I've got a lot of
Jack Ruby in this. You get both the interactions of these other conspirators and and of course TJ Mackey, who is sort of the ultimate fixer, go-between guy. You get both the interactions between these guys and the interactions that they have with women, typically their wives. Guy Bannister's female foil is his secretary / mistress. You never meet his wife. They have a very bantery sort of relationship. Wynne Everett has Marianne Everett, his wife, and his daughter Suzanne. And Lawrence Parmenter has his wife. God, starts with a B, but they are fully figured characters. Wynne Everett is an academic. He's very methodical, careful. He has these high level ideals, but ultimately he's also he's a family man in a very touching way. Lawrence, he and his wife are dinks. We're
dinks. We like to plot the dead
it's sort of a 2 martini lunch thing. He is more open with his wife about his involvement in intelligence. He'll give her drips and drabs of things to hear about. And then Dave Ferry's interactions are entirely with prostitutes. Well, every single one of his interactions is with a prostitute of one kind or another. And then Jack Ruby, when you hear him, he's talking to he ran a strip club. So he's mostly talking to his employee strippers. And through the way that all of these guys interact with their female foils, it's a very interesting way to get insight and to give them unique voices and give them make them more fully featured humans in the book. I think it's a very interesting way to accomplish the writing of the novel, especially because, they're not getting full perspective. They're not getting a full chapter of their own perspective. It will switch in the middle of the page who is getting the viewpoint.
Yeah, and that's very well done by DeLillo, having read a few books that do that, and most of the time it's pretty clunky and gets kind of distracting. I get a DeLillo.
I think it takes about 50 pages to get into the groove of that construction, but then, you know, it really works as things go on.
Because you know, the chapters are more a countdown, right? The chapters are dates leading up to November 22nd, right?
Yeah, and the events that occur in the dated chapters will not necessarily occur synchronously with the things that occur in the location chapters. So, you know, if you have a chapter like for example, Atsugi is of course a chapter from Lee's perspective talking about the events in Japan. But then, you know, you could go, the next chapter is a date chapter because you usually switch off. And, you know, you'll get a couple paragraphs from Nick Branch's perspective, which is occurring after everything else, of course, because he's compiling the story. You'll get a couple things about George Morenschild talking to Parmenter, that he has a guy that he feels like they should talk to who has this, you know, has this military experience and has defected in the past, at which, you know, you have not gotten a perspective chapter from Oswald showing the defection yet. And so it's sort of asynchronous the way that these go back and forth. And so you do keep a push and a pull through time with the way that the chapters are sort of layered like that. But every single Oswald chapter is chronological, right? So all of the location named chapters will chronologically follow the other.
The way that the novel sets it up, the event is kind of secondary. You know, there's the day of, there's his escape. He shoots the cop, and it's all very. DeLillo knows that we know pretty much what happened on that day, and he lets history kind of take the wheel there. With some smatterings of what he thinks Oswald was probably thinking at the time, or at least his makeup of Oswald was thinking.
Well, so yeah, and the way that it happens in the novel, so people know, Oswald takes 3 shots from the 6th floor window of the book depository building. First shot hits JFK and causes the like upper neck wound or lower neck wound. The second one hits Governor in his wrist. The third one, total miss, goes who the fuck knows where.
I think that's the one that skips on the concrete. Right.
And the kill shot comes from a parking lot past the grassy knoll and is Ramo, either Ramo or Francis, who takes the actual kill shot. And these guys are Cuban partisans who he had trained with in the Everglades. So they were part of the plot. So he is, of course, an accessory, but in the book, he is innocent of killing JFK. He did not do that. So
he would only get attempted murder.
Yeah, he would only get the little electric chair for attempting to kill the president. Yeah, so Oswald flees, goes to, of course, retrieves his other gun, is stopped by Tippett, the cop who he ends up shooting, is completely unreasonable in his interactions with the cop. He totally fucked himself in the novel. He was just like, "Am I being detained? Am I being detained?" They're just like,
he has a libertarian moment.
We're just you just asking what's going on, and they're like, "Please hold still," and he starts wobbling around. So
and he shoots him.
Then he shoots it, and then he shoots him 4 times in the chest. So Oswald goes to his planned rendezvous,
just as the founders intended.
Yes. Oswald goes to the intended rendezvous point, which is the theater. It's all things he actually did, and is about to be murdered by Wayne Elko, the other another one of the guys that he had trained with, in order to tie up the loose end. He did not realize this. He thought he was meeting David Ferry in order to go to Galveston and then get to Cuba.
Which also doesn't make any sense, because why would he go to Cuba if they're going to go to war with Cuba?
Well, so at that point in the story, he understands that they are working at cross purposes, but he believes that Cuba will prevail. And also, to be clear, Oswald contains multitudes, because he, that morning was telling was whispering his wife's sweet nothings and saying, that they would do these things and they would get a place together and they would have furniture that was all their own, and et cetera, which, is of course nonsense, because he was about to go do this thing that would result in him most likely being dead or in prison. Right. So Oswald is an unbalanced scale in this. He vacillates wildly. And I mean, you can see the pain in the guy. I have sympathy for the Oswald who is.
I have sympathy for Book Oswald.
I have sympathy for Book Oswald. The Oswald in Don DeLillo's Libra is one of the great sensitive young men of the 1980s. He is. He really is. And you could imagine him having been radicalized in the correct way.
Spencer Grunhauer.
Yeah, he's
goes to Dallas.
Yes, Spencer. Yes.
Because he also kind of reminds me, the way that he's written, of Ignatius Riley.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Especially the way that he just keeps fucking up, but thinks he's so much more than his circumstances. Yep. So yes, he's very, very almost quixotic.
Nice. I would say, I think I probably prefer A Confederacy of Dunces to Libra, but it's
one of the best novels of the 20th century, and this one's it's fine.
It's a great novel of the 20th century.
Yeah.
This is a good question. What of DeLillo's books are in Bloom's canon?
I think it's Libra and White Noise.
Okay. I will tell you in half a tick here. White Noise, Libra, Running Dog, and Mao too. That's what St. Bloom says.
That's what Hal had for us.
So I think it is this is a great novel. I think in terms of, I agree with your assertion that he is a character similar to Ignatius Riley, but he also is more courageous than Riley.
Right. Oh, definitely. I mean, he at least acts on his convictions.
Yeah, he absolutely acts on his convictions. He doesn't, he takes real risks. He is willing to.
He's a Spencer Grunhauer.
He's a guy who, well, no, because Grunhauer does the same thing that Riley does, which is that he will, in the moment, rationalize his basest desire. Right. Whereas Oswald has actual convictions.
I just meant, I guess, in terms of action, Grunhauer would. Spencer acts, whereas Ignatius was a man of inaction. He rationalized inaction to the nth degree.
Right, that's true. There's a through line here of the problem of identity. Right, Oswald conceived of himself as a man of history, a great man. He conceived of himself as a scholar, someone to be looked up to, as someone who would go down as a hero of the revolution. But he was not that guy. He was not fated to be that guy. And so because he wanted someone else's destiny, it ended up destroying him. And
he was a pawn who wanted to be more, but at the end of the day, he was always a pawn.
Yeah, You want to be on the chessboard? This boy's a checker.
We're playing chess, not checkers.
Yeah. So I have a few things. Did you have any passages saved?
I did not know.
Okay.
That's usually not my style.
I do have another little bit in here. I like that. I like how much page time he gave Jack Ruby, and I think he gave Jack Ruby this because he just. I think that Don DeLillo liked Jack Ruby.
Oh, I mean,
and I like Jack Ruby.
He's very interesting. If Jolly West hadn't ruined his brain, he would have had some interesting stories to tell.
Yeah. So Jack Ruby, he is this Jew from Chicago. Okay. He grew up around a bunch of Italians. And while he, does think of himself as a Jew and he's a practicing Jew, he talks to his rabbi and stuff. He is coded as the biggest Dago mook you could possibly imagine. And so this guy, he's like a hardworking, hustling
fellow Italians.
Guy. What?
Fellow Italians?
Oh yes, fellow Italians. So he's a hardworking guy. He's a hustler, but he's extremely low class. So he runs strip clubs. He owns a couple clubs. He does all of these like stupid little one-off business ideas. He is a fat guy who constantly pops diet pills, Preludins, which is a benzo. Like to be clear, this is a major stimulant and highly addictive.
Meth. He is on meth.
Yeah. He is rolling like a motherfucker. He like hoards dogs. He is very kind to vagrants. He really likes the police. He fucking loves America. This guy cried when FDR died. This guy loses his mind when JFK is killed. He closes his strip clubs. It is a day of mourning when JFK dies. Like that
is one knock I'll give DeLillo, is that he portrays the Ruby of the Warren Report.
Yeah.
Rather than giving him a little bit, like, I don't know, maybe he was just tired at the end of this thing. It's like, fuck it, Jack Ruby's who I say he is.
Yeah, but I mean, it's because
Jack Ruby, the guy, is so interesting.
No, for sure. And I mean, but the perspective here, all of the Jack Ruby perspective sections, like, are just gold, right? Like they should be ripped out and made into a short story. Like you could easily rework it that way, and it would be so fucking good. But Jack's car was a movable slum. His dogs had chewed up the seat covers and mats. They'd eaten the stuffing inside the rear seat, exposing the springs. There were paw marks on the windows. There were 8 empty liquor cartons tilted and wedged across the rear seat. He had jars of diet food rolling across the floor when he stopped or turned. He had a couple $100s on top of the dashboard, folded in butcher wrap stained with lamb chop blood. There were extra Preludins in the glove compartment, plus a bathing cap, a number of unpaid tickets, a number of address books, some loose condoms, a set of brass knuckles, and a TV guide. That is Jack Ruby's life, right? He is the contents of his car. This guy goes around to the delicatessen, gets 20 sandwiches, drops into the cop shop, and gives the police lunch, right? Just on a daily basis. He's losing his mind trying to get a loan from the mob, and meanwhile, like, spending a significant amount of money on like these frivolous things because he has these ideals. Like, he fucking loves the police. He is
also an unbalanced scale.
Yeah, he is.
He rides that line between the lawful police and the unlawful mafia. He is both a hyper patriot as well as a criminal.
He wants to be respected, but he is fundamentally an unrespectable guy, right?
He wants to be. He befriends dogs, but wants to be thought of as more than that.
So he's nice to vagrants. He takes pity on people, lets them into the business. He'll give people meals or free drinks just to be a nice guy, and because of that, he's his business is failing.
He also doesn't realize that the sort of nobility he's showing them is being shown to him
right
by the mob.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because they're like, hey, you know, we could loan shark you, but you know, don't take this loan. Don't take this loan, you'll get buried.
Jack, stop.
Yeah.
Jack,
but he has like this super soft side, but he'll also, like, you know, if a guy and he white knights his strippers. Because, you know, one guy grab ass as a waitress in one section, and he tries to throw him down a flight of stairs, like physically launch this guy and probably kill him. And then when the bouncers and stuff are like, just get him out of the place, Jack Ruby chases him down the block, like through the crowds that are waiting to go into the other clubs, and like has a street brawl with this random jackass. And like, so he has both like this huge kindness and this submerged rage. And that's this is, you know, another guy of tense contradictions, but like fascinatingly written. Major bipolar writing on Ruby, but he's for sure a highlight. Do you have any?
No, I'm trying to formulate I guess that DeLillo, and you know, I don't mean to speak for the man because I don't know what he was attempting to do, but one could see that he was trying to synthesize two ideas of Ruby, couldn't, and then just let the two halves kind of work in conflict with themselves. Like the book already kind of doesn't make sense, so to add this character who doesn't make sense is a very nice bow on top.
I do have a section that I wanted to wrap on.
Go ahead. Yeah.
If you're going to read one book from Don DeLillo, it's White Noise, like for sure.
I didn't. I was kind of out on DeLillo when I read White Noise, and this brought me back.
Okay, all right.
Which is weird, but
well, Libra is also a great one, and if you want to read a fictionalized account of one of the defining events of the 20th century, that is definitely
The
not
Perfect and the Wicked by T.R. Hudson.
But here's the section, and this is from the very end of the book, and from Nicholas Branch, so it's sort of DeLillo monologuing to us. If we are on the outside, we assume a conspiracy is a perfect working of a scheme. Silent, nameless men with unadorned hearts. A conspiracy is everything that ordinary life is not. It's the inside game, cold, sure, undistracted, forever closed off to us. We are the flawed ones, the innocents, trying to make some rough sense of the daily jostle. Conspirators have a logic and a daring beyond our reach. All conspiracies are the same taut story of men who find coherence in some criminal act. But maybe not. Branch thinks he knows better. He's learned enough about the days and months preceding November 22nd, and enough about the 22nd itself, to reach a determination that the conspiracy against the president was a rambling affair that succeeded in the short term due mainly to chance. Deft men and fools, ambivalence and fixed will, and what the weather was like. Branch not only has material resulting from the agency's internal investigations, he also has key information about the last stages of the plot derived from sources inside Alpha 6, the intelligence community, the FBI, and wherever else the curator may find. So, yeah, that's kind of both his statement on internal statement about his construction of the novel, but it's also the idea of the way that historical events go down. Like, perfect execution is unlikely to be the actual driving force behind events, and it's more likely that there are, you know, it's a constant churn of potentials, of potential serving of overlapping motives.
Right. And so one would imagine that the sequel to the JFK assassination would be the attempt from the other day. Right? We're recording this at the end of July, 2 weeks prior, 2.5
to the
weeks.
day.
Yeah. No, it didn't happen on a Saturday.
Yeah.
We're recording on a Friday right now. So 2 weeks and a day prior, former President Donald Trump, John Old F. Kennedy.
We're recording from an alternate universe. Yeah.
Donald Trump was somebody took a shot at him.
Another three-named guy.
Yes, it's always the three names. What is
most people have three names?
I know, but but like, why all three names?
Why do people ritualistically?
Yeah.
Why does the media ritualistically refer to people with three names?
The only one that isn't CIA was Hinckley, and everybody just knows him as John Hinckley.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, John Wilkes Booth.
Exactly. Oh, that was the CIA in the past. They used
time machine.
They used Chester A. Arthur's time machine.
Right. The presidential time machine. Sorry.
Anyway.
Yeah.
No, I'm thinking. So the would-be assassin who shall remain nameless is sort of the competency crisis Lee Harvey Oswald. Like everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for that guy, and a more competent assassin or assassins who have not been found yet
would have been successful.
Would have JFK.
Do you think it's a competency crisis, a negative competency crisis, or a positive competency crisis? And what I mean by that is that, do you think that it is that the safeguards preventing haphazard assassination attempts, right, have weakened and fallen due to the competency crisis? So, everything functioning as intended, but at not the correct level. Or do you think that it is a competency crisis in terms of, we're no longer raising assassons?
Very incompetent people on both sides.
Okay. They're very both sides have very.
They're not sending their best.
Sending their best. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of questions. Strangely, we know a lot more about Lee Oswald's past than we do about
this kid.
Yeah, you'd think that someone would have a paper trail in the modern day. Yeah, you think someone who was online from the age of fucking 4 would have some kind of paper trail, but I guess not.
No, of course, and just stop asking questions. Just Kamala is a brat or whatever.
Is brat? We don't use articles.
I don't give a shit. Oh God.
Yes. Well,
before I fed post, let's end the episode.
And to all the listeners out there, remember, actively don't premeditate anything.
Yes. Always be just randomly doing things by chance. Let fate guide you.
Let fate guide you. It's only the second degree when you let fate guide you.
Your Honor, I was just following destiny. The guy, not the
video game player.
Yes, Your Honor. It's his fault. I saw his wife dancing with that other man, and I thought, I want to insert...
There, but for the grace of God go I.
I want to insert crime here.
All right. Well, that's it.
All right. Yeah, no, that'll be it. Cap, but why don't you... long one. We did work today. Why don't you tell the good people where they can find you and your wonderful work?
Absolutely. You can find me on on X, formerly Twitter, at the Capitalisimo. And you can find me on Rumble at Drive Time Movie Night with Cap and Mike. And you can find me on YouTube at Tookies Mag, where we cover more recent literary works from our guys.
I typically put these links in the show notes, but because I am a frenemy of Tookies Mag, I will not be doing that this time.
I will be hacking T.R. Hudson's. Actually, you know what? Last time you didn't even put us on you. You didn't even put our episode on YouTube.
I had no choice. You gave me no choice. I will say I prefer this book to Farnham's Freehold, if only because I didn't have to read out Barb's part.
That's so true. I should have given you a radio play section.
You're slipping.
I'm slipping. All right.
Well, I don't know how to end podcasts, so I will just say insert ending here.